Give us Michael, give us Michael, give us Michael, give a smile. Give us Michael, give us Michael, be the reason someone smiles. Give us Michael, give us Michael, give us Michael, give a smile. Give us Michael, give us Michael, be the reason someone smiles. Give us Michael, give us Michael, give us Michael, give a smile. Give us Michael, give us Michael, be the reason someone smile. Give us Michael, give us Michael, give us Michael, give a smile. Give us Michael, give us Michael, be the reason someone smiles. Siva, Gedola, Leo, Leo, Desimcha. Siva, Gedola, Leo, Leo, Desimcha. Siva, Gedola, Leo, Leo, Desimcha. Siva, Gedola, Leo, Desimcha. Siva, Gedola, Leo, 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 Desimcha. Be the reason someone smiles. 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 Siva Gedola, Leo Desimcha. Siva Gedola, Leo Leo Desimcha. Siva Gedola, Leo Leo Desimcha. Siva Gedola, Leo Desimcha. Someone smile. The reason someone smile. The reason someone smile. Be the reason someone smiles. Be the reason someone smiles.
Breakfast with Elli.
Mode ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla raba emunatecha.
There's an incredible anecdote in the Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz, the 12th of Tammuz, 1957, that I was just learning recently, in which the Rebbe mentions in one little paragraph that the Baal Shem Tov, and it's also quoted in Shivchei Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov cried about the spiritual reality of Shabtai Tzvi. Now, Shabtai Tzvi is a person that brought decimation to thousands, tens of thousands of Jews. He was a false messiah. He eventually converted to Islam. He brought spiritual destruction to perhaps hundreds of thousands of Jews in Europe and the Middle East. And yet, the Baal Shem Tov, when thinking about Shabtai Tzvi's spiritual decimation, his personal spiritual destruction, he cried. Shabtai Tzvi was one of the worst that the Jewish people have ever experienced. And the Baal Shem Tov cried. And I kept reading this over and over, and I couldn't get enough of it, because how often do we cry about another Jew's spiritual state? We judge, we have opinions, we think we know better than everyone and everything, but to simply shed a tear for another Jew's spiritual state, even if that Jew, right? We don't know any Jews that are worse than Shabtai Tzvi. There's no such thing. And yet, we don't cry. To go into a corner and say a kapitel Tillim, to say a psalm, to pray for them and cry for them, it's an incredible expression of our love for another Yid. Let that sink in, and let us do better with less judging and more tearful prayers for Achenu B'nai U'B'nais Yisrael, our Jewish brothers and sisters. Have a wonderful day.
Es gibt der Tag von Shabbos, wie ein Feier brennt ist Shabbos, die ganze Stube ist lichtig von der Shabbos. Es gibt der Tag von Shabbos, wie ein Feier brennt ist Shabbos, die ganze Stube ist lichtig von der Shabbos. Oi, na 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 na, wir singen an dem Shabbos. Oi, na 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 na.
Ay, 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 good Shabbos. Ay, da layla. Ay, da layla. Ay, 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 Shabbos Kodesh.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Elli. It is Friday, the 30th and second to last day of December, the 6th day of TEVES, the year 5783, the year of Hakhel. We are still in the beautiful glow of Didan Notzach, that we are victorious. A little bit more about the Rebbe's library coming up. The Torah portion is Vayigash, HaYom, Yom, Shishi, Shabbos, the 6th day, counting up towards Shabbos. We're learning the 6th and 7th Aliyos in New York City tonight. You light Shabbos candles at 4:19 p.m., and Shabbos will end at a whopping 5:23 tomorrow night. 4:19, 5:23. In case you have any questions, it's right here at the bottom of the screen and right here on the side of the screen. It'll be there the entire program. How are you? Did you have a good time yesterday? Did you buy lots of books? Oh, I hope so. I hope you did. Yesterday was the day to buy books, and today you can buy books also. You go to kahut.com for a 25 to 50% discount on all the books that they have. All right. Let's get started. Let's say a bracha over our tzitzis, men and boys. Go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat tzitzit.
All right. Al divrei Torah. Oops, here we go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah.
Okay, Hareini Mikabel.
Hareini mikabel alay mitzvat aseh shel ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. I take upon myself every single day to love my fellow friend in a very special way.
All right, Torah.
Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha שורש הקהילת יעקב.
All right, now it's time to give tzedakah. Are you ready?
I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else to keep. Yeah, I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else in need.
All right, tzedakah has been given so much. All right, now it's time to say the Shema. Cover your eyes, please.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
All right, and that brings us to breakfast.
Hakhel niye bidvoroi, Hakhel niye bidvoroi.
All right, what do we have today for breakfast? We have coffee and yogurt. Wow! Are you ready? Baruch ato Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niya bidvoroi.
Coffee, blessed coffee. God bless you for being a friend. When the whole world turns on me, it's only you on which I can depend. I want to taste you in the morning and a few times throughout the day. Yes, a cup or two in the evening too. For me, it's the only way. Yeah.
All right, there you go. All right, brings us.
Year after year, I learned about the story of Yosef, Joseph, and his brothers, and how the fact that they didn't realize that it was him, and it makes no sense. How can it be that his brothers, who, okay, maybe he looked a little different, but his brothers are standing right in front of him, they grew up with him, they hear his voice, he keeps on asking about his father, about his brother, he knows so many details, intimate details about their family, all the facts are in front of them. How could they be missing this obvious answer? And it made no sense until I finally learned this year that that's actually the point. It doesn't make sense. They weren't missing any logic, they weren't missing any information, they were very intelligent. What they were missing was a small amount of interest. They were not interested in believing this to be the truth, because believing that he was their brother means that they acted incorrectly by selling him, and believing that his dreams will come true, that he will rule over them. And because they did not have the interest in recognizing that, no matter how many facts were laid out in front of them, their hearts refused to let their vision be clear. And this brings to mind another obvious conclusion that people fail to make. When it comes to believing in God, we could have all the information very clearly set out in front of us. If you walk outside and you see the beauty and the intelligence of nature and of our bodies, how amazingly magnificent they're built, and all the divine providence that happens in each of our individual lifetimes, the facts point to there being a God in control. But there's a small little lack of interest deep down inside of us that tells us that if we're going to agree that this is the truth, that means that we have to answer to a higher authority. And because of that disinterest, we have a difficult time seeing what's clearly set out in front of us. Hopefully all of us will have our aha moment and gain that clarity that we've been avoiding. Have a wonderful week.
Wow. Wow. That aha moment. Have you ever had it? The aha moment? It's pretty cool when you do. Our daily reminder. all right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Today in Jewish history. Reminder that we light Shabbos candles at 4:19 p.m. 4:19 p.m. Shabbos is the passing of Reb Tzvi, the son of the Baal Shem Tov. He passed away in the year 1780. After the passing of the Baal Shem Tov in 1760, Reb Tzvi succeeded him as leader of the Hasidic movement. Exactly 1 year later, Reb Tzvi announced to his disciples that his father had appeared to him in a vision and instructed him to transfer the leadership to Reb Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich. And there's a beautiful story attached to that. You should go to Chabad.org and read that, because it's truly, truly amazing. All right, this Shabbos night, after Shabbos is over, we make Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the moon. All right, and that's generally done 7 days after the holiday, which is now. All right. Also, the first edition of the Sefer Mitzvahs HaGadol was published in Cincino, Italy in 1488. The Slobodka Yeshiva in Bnei Brak by Reb Isaac Sher, and who was the son-in-law of Reb Nosson Nata Finkel, the Alta from Slobodka, founded the Slobodka Yeshiva in, doesn't say the year. How about that? 3 leaders of Babylonian Jewry were arrested by Persian officials, sparking a wave of persecution of the Jews of Babylonia in 468. And Reb Shimon Schwab, the founder of the rabbi of the entire German Kehillah congregation, was born this day, Shabbos, in Frankfurt am Main in 1908. Now, we've been talking about Didan Notzach, the victory, and we learned about how the Rebbe's library is the crown jewel of Lubavitch.
The previous Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Rashab, said before his passing, and he wrote extensively, that he is passing on to the next world, but I'm leaving you my writings. That's a very emotional statement.
As described in the court case, that this collection of manuscripts went from Rebbe to Rebbe, and all of them are reposited by the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe to be part of the library.
This library is actually the crown jewel of the Chabad movement. It is illustrious, it is precious. This library is a Rechus HaUmah. It belongs to the Jewish people. And I would say that I have no doubt that it was very dear to the Rebbe. It was something that he cherished and used.
We have here 50, 60,000 visitors a year that are coming to see these special items. And every year or two, we select one subject to show them. I wrote to the Rebbe, so many books came in the boxes, in the staircases, in all the corners, and we have no space to put them on the shelves. So the Rebbe said, write me a suggestion how to enlarge the library.
On this very special day of TEVES, when the Rebbe's heart was gladdened, let us gladly, with our whole heart, contribute generously to the maintenance and the growth of the Rebbe's library.
The Rebbe said by the Verbringen, every year when this day comes, it's a Yom Skule for everything that has to do with the victory of books and the library. And therefore, everyone that has the ability to bring in more books or to help the library to build up, it is the proper thing for him to do in this day.
The Rebbe's countenance was touched so deeply.
Pretty amazing, right? there is a story that they wanted you to hear before Shabbat.
It was the night after the verdict. Ma'ariv was in the small zal right off of the Rebbe's office. I'm this pre-bar mitzvah boy, 1 month before my bar mitzvah, so I have my first hat, but I'm still a kid below bar mitzvah. I'm a little shorter than everyone else. I was standing in the front row. After davening, the Rebbe closes his eyes and begins to speak. Now, this was totally unexpected. There wasn't even a microphone there. Now, just as the Rebbe started speaking, there was a bacher right next to me, maybe 2 people over, probably about 18 years old. He pulled out of his pocket a micro cassette recorder, which at the time was super compact, probably about this big. And he hit record and he held it out toward the Rebbe.
Haben sie das noch nie getan. Und können sie das tun, auch in Asami lesen, als wenn Berlin hätte morgen vornachts ziehen. Sie können mitnehmen, Seele nehmen.
Within a couple minutes, Rabbi Groner put in a microphone. From then, you were able to hear it on the speakers in the room, and people outside were able to listen.
Und wie bald das ich nicht lehnen, die Zettel, mehr nicht wie übergeben. Weglegen die Zettel in Berlin, dort auf Neil, kann sich jeder schreiben, kol Horeize. Und da hat sich nicht was zu schämen, warum sich mehr nicht. Da schreibt sich bei dem Ewigsten, alle denen sie, der Reinu.
People were like, wow. Well, now is an opportunity to ask for anything that you want. And thousands of Jews from across the world sent in these requests. The fax machines in the offices upstairs were pouring out faxes nonstop. One would finish, it would ring, the next one would begin coming. Many people were calling and dictating their requests and giving over their names and their mother's names. I remember the next day, actually, when the Rebbe left for the oil, watching the Rebbe's car being loaded up with bags and bags and bags of panim, of letters, of requests. People were crowding around the Rebbe's car. And as the Rebbe backed out, somebody came running directly over to the Rebbe, to the car. And the Rebbe asked Rebbe Krinsky to open the window and took the letter from him. Even after that, requests kept on flowing in, and they were bringing these bags of letters to the Rebbe at the oil. I know of many people, actually, who received brachas then. There are people who had children, there are people who got out of life-threatening situations. Incredible brachas were unleashed during that period.
There you have it. Pretty cool stuff. HaYom for today, the 6th day of TEVES, and tomorrow, the 7th day of TEVES.
We always talk about positive change. We want to change the communities that we live in. We want to change the world. But as we go through life, we learn that usually the most difficult place to make change is inside of yourself. To positively change your very nature, your very character, is a difficult thing to do. Chassidus recognizes this and talks about positive character change all the time. It's interesting that the Hasidic term for positive character change is avoida. Avoida means work or service or labor, because positive personal change doesn't happen by itself. It's hard work. Today's HaYom presents the Hasidic formula for positive self-change. It opens with a verse from the Torah. Da es Elokei avicha. Da means to know or to learn. Learn about the God of your fathers. But that's just the first half of the verse. The second half of the verse is critical. Va'avaduhu belev shalem. Worship, serve that God with a complete heart. What's the meaning of these two clauses linked together in the same pasuk? That the idea is anything that you experience through through knowledge, any Torah idea that you learn about on a cognitive level, even if it's the most deepest abstract concept, after you finish understanding that idea on an intellectual level, you now have to move into the avodah phase. Somehow, the idea that you understand in your mind now has to be translated into positive refinement of your character. The idea in your head has to be translated into an inner connection to Hashem. This then is the Hasidic formula for positive self-change. When you learn a Torah idea, every time it has to somehow make you a better person in terms of your inner character. Hasidic teachings rarely discuss the punishments experienced by the soul in the afterlife, because we try to talk more about positive reinforcement and life. But today's HaYom does prescribe behavior patterns through which a person can avoid these afterlife punishments. Says today's HaYom, the way by which to avoid chibut hakever, which is an uncomfortable experience for both the body and soul after death, is by dedicating 1/6 of the day to reciting words of Torah and Tehillim. 1/6 of the day, that's 4 hours. Where does a working person have 4 hours? How does a working person have 4 hours a day to commit to Torah, words of Torah and Tehillim? We'll get back to that in a moment. Do you know what the worst form of punishment is? The worst type of punishment is when a person is forced to come face to face with the destruction, with the damage brought about by one's own deeds. That's what Kaf Hakhel is. In the Kaf Hakhel experience, the soul is thrown from one extreme state of consciousness to the next, and back and forth and back and forth. So one moment, the soul's perspective is a holy, divine one, in which the soul perceives the world in the pure and wonderful way that Hashem intended it to be. And then, the next moment, the soul is forced to come face to face with the damage that the person's misdeeds brought into that world. That's Kaf Hakhel. How does one avoid Kaf Hakhel? By reciting every day, as much as possible, words of Mishnayos, Tanya, and Tehillim by heart. By heart. That's key. You see, if a person is able to commit sections of Torah study to memory, that's very valuable. Because now you have the ability to engage in Torah study, not just when you're in shul or have a book in your hands, but even when you're driving in your car or walking in the mall. Knowledge of Torah by memory is a way by which you can engage in Torah study throughout your day.
All right. And there you have it. We are up to date with HaYom Yom. And now, Cantor Laserbrook. actually going to go straight to a word from our sponsor.
And now, a word from our sponsors. PestProRidall.com.
PestProRidall.com, trusted by the best to keep away the pests. We are offering COVID-19 disinfection services. Mention this ad and get 1 month free service. Visit us at PestProRidall.com.
Tarzane Group, micro, miniature, and small orchids. Go to tarzanegroup.com or call Tomas at 305-440-0565. That's 305-440-0565 and order today. Visit Tomas and Yair at tarzanegroup.com. Micro, miniature, and small orchids, beautiful in your home. Go to the website and read Tomas's orchid blog. And by Dina D Design. DinaDDesign at gmail.com. Fine artwork, custom made to your specifications, logos, wall hangings, Judaica, and you can even have something for your child's room. Dina D Designs. Go to her Facebook or Instagram or call or text. Thank you very much to our sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor, please go right up here to where it says patreon.com/theactorsrabbi, and you can contribute even only $1 a month if you'd like, but that'll help us bring this broadcast to you on a daily basis and cover our expenses. Be sure to thank your sponsors when shopping and mention Breakfast with Elli when you're shopping there. There might be discounts. Thanks for watching.
Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe.
All right, patreon.com/theactorsrabbi or breakfastwithelli.live/tipjar if you would like to contribute today. We are in the middle of Rabbi Sachs's covenant and conversation for the Parsha Vayigash. So let us continue.
On all these theories, our inner freedom is severely circumscribed. Who we are and how we feel are largely dictated by factors other than the conscious mind. So it was Viktor Frankl who showed there was another way, and he did so under some of the worst conditions ever endured by human beings, in Auschwitz. As a prisoner there, Frankl discovered that the Nazis took away almost everything that made people human: their possessions, their clothes, their hair, their very names. Before being sent to Auschwitz, Frankl had been a therapist specializing in curing people who had suicidal tendencies. In the camp, he devoted himself as far as he could to giving his fellow prisoners the will to live, knowing that if they lost it, they would soon die. There he made the fundamental discovery for which he later became famous. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. What made the difference, what gave people the will to live, was the belief that there was a task for them to perform, a mission for them to accomplish, that they hadn't yet completed and that was waiting for them to do in the future. Frankl discovered that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. There were people in the camp who had so lost hope that they had nothing more to expect from life. Frankl was able to get them to see that life was still expecting something from them. One, for example, had a child still alive in a foreign country who was waiting for him. Another came to see that he had books to produce that no one else could write. Through this sense of a future calling to them, Frankl was able to help them to discover their purpose in life, even in the valley of the shadow of death. The mental shift this involved came to be known, especially in cognitive behavioral therapy, as reframing. Just as a painting can look different when placed in a different frame, so can a life. The facts don't change, but the way that we perceive them does. Frankl, for instance, writes that he was able to survive Auschwitz by daily seeing himself as if he were in a university giving a lecture on the psychology of the concentration camp. Everything that was happening to him was transformed by this one act of the mind into a series of illustrations of the points he was making in the lecture. By this method, I succeeded somehow in rising above the situation, above the sufferings of the moment, and I observed them as if they were already of the past. Reframing tells us that though we can't always change the circumstances in which we find ourselves, we can change the way we see them, and this itself changes the way we feel. Yet, this modern discovery is really a rediscovery, because the first great reframer in history was Joseph, as described in this week's and next week's parashiot. Recall the facts. He'd been sold into his slavery by his brothers. He'd lost his freedom for 13 years. He'd been separated from his family for 22 years. It would be understandable if he felt toward his brothers resentment and a desire for revenge. Yet he rose above such feelings and did so precisely by shifting his experiences into a different frame. Here is what he says to his brothers in this week's parasha when he first discloses his identity to them. I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And this is what he says years later in next week's parasha, after their father Jacob had died and the brothers feared that now he might take revenge. Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Though you intended to harm me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and for your little ones. Joseph had reframed his entire past. He no longer saw himself as a man wronged by his brothers. He had come to see himself as a man charged with a life-saving mission by God. Everything that had happened to him was necessary so that he could achieve his purpose in life, to save an entire region from starvation during a famine and to provide a safe haven for his family. This single act of reframing allowed Joseph to live without a burning sense of anger and injustice. It enabled him to forgive his brothers and be reconciled with them. It transformed the negative energies of feelings about the past into focused attention to the future. Joseph, without knowing it, had become the precursor of one of the great movements in psychotherapy in the modern world. He showed the power of reframing. We cannot change the past, but by changing the way we think about the past, we can change the future. Whatever situation we are in, by reframing it, we can change our entire response, giving us the strength to survive, the courage to persist, and the resilience to emerge on the far side of darkness into the light of a new and better day.
Right? That was absolutely, positively amazing. I'm so happy that we did that. All right. In the sixth Aliyah, Yaakov arrives in Egypt to the province of Goshen that Paro had allotted for his family. Yosef goes there to greet his father and prepared his family for meeting Pharaoh and instructed the brothers to tell Paro that they are shepherds who only wish to tend to their flocks in Goshen until the famine ends. Indeed, The brothers followed this script as we recite in the Haggadah every year, and Paro acceded to their request. Yaakov was then brought before Paro, and Yaakov blessed Paro. In the seventh Aliyah, while Yosef supplied his family with food, the rest of Egypt was in a desperate plight. First, they expended all their money in exchange for food that Yosef sold them. Then their money ran out, and they paid provisions with their cattle. And finally, when they had no money or cattle left, they sold their land and themselves to Paro into servitude in exchange for provisions. Meanwhile, in the land of Goshen, Yaakov's family prospered and multiplied exceedingly. And the story will be continued next week in our Parsha, the last Parsha of Breshis. I know, exciting. All right, here's Shnayim Yomi.
ואת יהודה שלח לפניו ויוסף להורות לפניו גושנה ויבואו ארצה גושן. We are on פרשת ויגש, 6th עלייה, עליית יסוד. We see over here that Yaakov, before he's going to Egypt to see his son Yosef, for so many years he was waiting for that specific moment. Very excited. But then he's asking Yehuda to go before to country of Goshen. להורות לפניו. To do what? To do what? So Rashi is telling us, Midrash Haggadah, which is a concept, לתקן לו בית תלמוד. It means that before Yaakov is going to Egypt, to see his son for the first time after so many years, he's sending Yehuda to establish Bet Midrash, Bet Knesset, Bet Din. It means that Yaakov, there is no way that he's going to a place when there is no Torah. Any dar ela bimkom Torah. Yaakov is telling you, yes, I will go see my son. Yes, I will go there to country of Goshen to live in Egypt. No problem. But first, make sure Bet Midrash. People sitting and learning Torah. If there is no Torah, there is nothing there. That's what he's telling to Yehuda. And the pasuk continue. ויעשו יוסף מרכבתו והיה לקראת ישראל. יוסף הצדיק now is going to receive his father. That's what he's going to do. Very important. The mitzvah of kibud avayim to their people. Their parents coming to visit them, they send Uber. Your father is coming, go to the airport. Very important. So Yosef, that's what he's doing. ויעשו יוסף מרכבתו, he's going to see his father Israel, Yaakov. Then the pasuk is telling you, וירא עליו ויפול צוואריו ויבכה צוואריו. He was crying. It was emotion. But Rashi is telling us, ואמרו רבותינו שהיה קורא את שמה. You know what Yaakov did? First thing that he sees his son Yosef, first thing, he says, I miss you so much. Baruch mechayei hametim. I'm so happy to see you. How are you? How's everything? How's wife? How's life? How's the kids? Nothing. Yaakov saying Shema Israel. Ve'haya im shamoa. Ve'avta. That's what Yaakov is doing. The rabbi is explaining us that moment that Yaakov felt so special. He felt elevated. He felt complete. He felt in a very good place. He decided to dedicate that moment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They don't want to waste it for words that are very important, but still. He said Kiryat Shema in that moment that he saw his son, just to show you. Then the pasuk continue. ויאמר יוסף אל אחיו אל בית אביו. Let's go to Paro to explain the king. Who are my brothers? Who is my father? Very important. And he's telling them something very important. You need to know something, that Egypt is not the regular place that you've been before. There's lots of to'eva. It's disgusting. There is lots of impurity. You should stay in country of Goshen. Here Yosef HaTzadik is guiding his father and his brothers where they need to be. The Rambam is telling us that before you do anything, the Rambam in Sefer HaMadai El Chodeo, the first thing you need is to choose the right environment. You need to know that if you really want to grow, to be successful, to elevate yourself, make sure that your surrounding environment is good, is the right thing. It's very, very important. And that's what Yosef HaTzadik is telling to Yaakov. Don't leave country of Goshen. Make sure that you're staying in the right place and not, God forbid, you're going to a place of impurity. Thank you. Shalom Aleichem Kahal Kadosh, Baruch Hashem, we're getting ready for Shabbat Parashat Vayigash, and there is few words that's going on and on, the whole parasha from the beginning to the end. It seems like nothing to do with anything of our story, but I think this is very important, and maybe this is the message from our parasha, Parashat Vayigash, when Yehuda is approaching Yosef. So, at the beginning we see that he's telling Yosef that, listen, I cannot go back to my father without Binyamin. If he will see that Binyamin enenu, he will die. She's talking about the life of Yaakov, that his father Yaakov will die. And then he talks about himself, that he will die, in this world and in the world to come. And then Yosef is asking the brothers, Aod Avi Chai, my father is still alive. And then the brother is going to Yaakov and telling him, Yosef is still alive. And then Yaakov is saying, oh, I should go see him before I will die. And then when he's coming to Egypt, he wants to see that Yosef is still alive, so before he's gonna die, he will see. So now he can die because his son that is alive. So many things. Yaakov is alive, Yaakov is about to die. What's the Torah trying to tell us? But it's not all of it. Then you're going to Paro. Paro is okay, hey, how old are you? Why Paro is asking how old? He says, no, me'at ve'ra'im shelem mechayai. My life was very bad, I'm about to die. The whole parasha, it seems like we're talking about the life of Yaakov. If he's alive, he's gonna die. Yosef is alive, he's gonna die. Before he will die, after he will die. Why we need all of it? And then Yaakov is telling to Paro, but don't worry, even when I will die, you'll stay with the blessing. The Rashi explained when Yaakov came, the Nile came to Paro, so it was a big blessing that now they don't need to pump the water, and the Nile, the Nilus, was basically bringing blessing, and instead of having 7 years of no food, it has only 2 years. So what's the idea of all of those things? And I believe that right now Yaakov is going to a country that this place, Mitzrayim, it's full of materialism. It's only the physical reality. It's only money and food and desires and impurity and power. That's it. That's all they want. All of those people who live there, they're going to the lowest of the lowest, just looking to satisfy their body and their physical desires. And Yaakov wants to teach Paro, the Egyptians, his own children, and himself, very important fundamental message about how Jewish people should live in exile. It's not about today. It's not about what we have today, about our life, how we're living day to day. It's about afterlife. It's about the future. It's about Olam Haba. It's about the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's about the Torah. That's the whole discussion. About Yaakov is alive, Yaakov is gonna die, Yosef is alive. Because they want to know and tell us that it's not about today. It's not about those seconds of what we're doing, what we're earning, where you're going to live in Egypt, in country of Goshen, what you're going to have, what kind of blessing you'll have. It's about what you're able to earn here for the world to come. What you were able to accomplish before the person is dying. That's what Yaakov is saying. Before Amut, before I'm going to leave this world, I want to make sure I can grab anything possible to acquire here, to have for the real world, the world to come. That's the message of Yaakov. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Rabbi Martyr is back with us today.
Boker Tov, good morning. Today is Friday, December 30th, Erev Shabbat, Parshat Vayigash. What are the essential components to a community? The things that you need to make sure are in place so that a community is prepared for and can deliver the needs that a Jewish community have. It is presented to us in the following pasuk, beginning of Shishi, the 6th Aliyah in Parshat Vayigash, which reads as follows: Ve'et Yehuda shalach lefanav el Yosef. Yaakov sent Yehuda ahead of him, the advance party, to Yosef. Lahorot lefanav Goshna, to direct them to Goshen. Vayavo Arza Goshen, and they arrived at the land of Goshen. Rashi offers the simple explanation as the Targum would have it. Lefanot lo makom ulahorot heachit yasheva. He was the advancement to go and to clear out a parcel of land so that they could live there, and to give direction, lahorot lefanav, to direct how they would dwell there. Or as a chizkuni, shiyoreh lo et haderech legoshen, below Yividal Mitzrayim. He could find a way in which they can go directly to Goshen without entering the space of Mitzrayim, the capital of Egypt, the experience that he was wishing to protect his family from, although they've already been there, but not the children, they haven't been there. So, L'harot lefanav, to give the direction. That's exactly what it means. A mored derech is a guide, and that's what he's there to do. And then Rashi goes on, Umidrash Agadah, but now a homiletical reading. L'horot lefanav, the word hora'ah also means not just general guidance, but an educational guidance. A moreh is part of that word. Netaken lo beit Talmud, shemisham teitzei hora'ah, to prepare a house of study from which direction will emerge, whether halachic direction, and whether how anachronistic we want to read this Rashi, that this is like a yeshiva, but it is something like that, right? They should prepare a place in which they could study the teachings of the house of Abraham and Yitzchak and now Yaakov. It needed to be put in place early on. In fact, in advance of the arrival of the family, they need to go, Yehuda goes as the advancement to make sure this is in place. Many of you know, those of you who are watching, that my family suffered the loss of my father, Mordechai David ben Rafael al-Cohen, Milton martyr, and we just arose from Shiva on Wednesday morning. One of the themes of what we talked about around the week involved my father's playing a role just as Yehuda did. Maybe not as an advanced man, but as someone who recognized what was needed in a community. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and along with my siblings, and my father, along with a few other individuals in the community, recognized that there was something sorely missing there in terms of the Jewish education that other children weren't receiving. And beginning with my sister, in her class, I was the fourth class of a school that my father devoted every waking moment when he wasn't involved in his daytime work. My father devoted himself with these others to raise money and make plans for, and then to help convince families who were uncertain as to whether this was a good idea for them and their children, to build a school and to finance it and to populate it, and to then help ensure that the school would thrive. That was the Richmond Hebrew Day School, and later now still exists as the Rudland Torah Academy, and that is a tremendous zechus that my father has, not just for my education, and I am who I am in many ways because of that investment of his heart to accomplishing that, but generations of children in Richmond, Virginia, have a Jewish education and Jewish life because of that work. That is the fulfillment of this verse. Ve'et Yehuda shalach lefanav lahorot lefanav goshna, and the people that know and appreciate exactly what is necessary are the people that really are the heroes, sung or unsung, of our people. And it's a great merit and zechus for me to be his son, and we hope that it will indeed serve him well up in the yeshiva Shalmala in the heavenly school as well. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.
All right. We didn't get to our Parsha song this week yet.
voice so strong, said, I am Yosef, is my father still alive? Ani Yosef, ha'ol avichai. Don't be afraid, the brothers were told. It was Hashem's will that I was sold. Go and tell our father, to Hashem I am true. Take food and wagons, but bring Yaakov back with you. I am Yosef, is my father still alive? Ani Yosef, ha'od avichai. Sarah played on her keynote, Yosef is alive. Yaakov was so happy when the wagons did arrive. When Yaakov saw Yosef after so many years, they hugged one another and cried happy tears. I am Yosef, my father is alive. I am Yosef, my father is alive.
All right. All right. Let us now go to our friend Harry.
Immediately after Yosef drops the bombshell and reveals his true identity to his brothers, he calms them down. He tells them, Al yichar be'einechem. Don't be angry in your eyes. That is a very weird phrase. Anger is an emotion. In your eyes refers to logic or the intellect. He's putting those two words together because he's hinting to them. Your natural reaction is going to be anger. Anger at yourselves for the mistake you made, maybe even anger at me. Don't be angry. Use your eyes, use your intellect. Think about it. God worked it out, even though you had other plans. There's a famine where you are. I'm here in Egypt where there's food, and I'm the ruler. I can provide for everybody. So don't be upset. There is one other time in the Torah when that phrase is used. Years earlier, when Yosef's father, Yaakov, was living with his family, with his father-in-law, Lavan, he had to escape. His father-in-law wouldn't have let him leave. So he leaves under cover of darkness. Before he leaves with the family, his wife, unbeknownst to him, Hakhel, steals her father's idols. She wants to stop him from idolatry. Lavan finds out that they've left. He tracks them down with his posse, accuses Yaakov of theft. Yaakov denies it, and Lavan's searching their possessions. He gets to his daughter Rachel, and she says to him, don't be angry in your eyes. Same phrase. She's hinting to him, your natural reaction is going to be anger. Your idols were stolen, they're missing. But think about it. Look in your eyes, use your intellect. If your idols didn't have enough power to even protect themselves from theft, why are you worshiping them? So that's the connection between the two uses of that unusual phrase. I want to suggest another possibility. Immediately after Yosef's revelation, anything was on the table. Who knows how the brothers are going to react? They may destroy each other. It could be civil war. So he needs to calm them down and create family harmony. So he uses a phrase, he repeats a phrase that he heard when he was younger, and that they heard when they were younger, because they were all there when that phrase was uttered, because it was uttered by his mother. But she's not just his mother. She's Mama Rachel. She's the mother of the Jewish people, the person who saves the Jewish people. Years later, when we're going into exile, and God's really debating, is he going to save us? And all of our great ancestors are begging him, and he's saying no, 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 and no, until she approaches, argues her case, our case, and he says, you just saved the Jewish people. So maybe that's what Yosef's tapping into, his mother's superpower, the ability to save the Jewish people during this incredibly tricky, difficult time in the existence and the relationship between the tribes. And think about it. She's the only one, Mama Rachel, of the matriarchs and the patriarchs, who's not buried in Hebron in the Maras Machpelah. She's out there on the road in Kever Rachel. To this day, no doubt, still pleading her case, still pleading our case, interceding, knocking on the doors of heaven whenever the Jewish people need help, need protection.
If you like that video, hit the subscribe button and notification bell below for hours of the best Jewish content online.
All right, this week's Haftorah.
Shalom Aleichem Chaverim V'Yedidim. In this week's Haftorah, Parshas Vayigash, the reason why this week's Haftorah is chosen as a connection to the Parsha is because obviously in the Parsha we find the separation and divisions between the brothers. And Vayigash Elav Yehuda, Yehuda approaches Yosef, and there's the Malchus Yehuda, Malchus Yosef. So that's why we read the Haftorah in Yecheskel where it speaks about the split amongst the Shvatim, and how eventually there won't be any more split and everybody will be as one. It's interesting to note that over the last couple of Haftorahs, even though the Shulchan Aruch says that it's preferable that you should have, every Haftorah should have a minimum of 21 psukim. And the reason for that is because the whole Haftarah was established as a replacement during the times where you couldn't read the Torah. So just like the Torah has to have 7 Aliyos, and each Aliyah has to have a minimum of 3 psukim, so 7 times 3 is 21. So it's preferable, without obviously with some exceptions, that the Haftarah should have a minimum of 21 psukim. I'm thinking over the last couple of weeks we had a couple of them where the exception to the rule. I'm looking at this week's Haftarah. It starts on Pasuk Perek Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Tez Vav, and it goes through Chav Ches. So it doesn't have the number 21. And the reason for that is basically when the Inyan is totally said, complete, in less than 21 psukim, it's fine. Anyways, this is the gist of the topic why it's connected to this week's Parsha. Like every week, we'll try to highlight some of the psukim that I mentioned in the Haftarah, and we'll see what some of the Mefarshim say. So again, the Haftarah, the Navi is talking about, the Yecheskel is talking about the split between the Malchus Yehuda and Malchus Yosef. And it says, Va'ata ben Adam kach lecha eitz echad, take one piece of wood, uksoiv olav liYehuda v'levnei Yisrael chaveiroi. So on one wood you write Yehuda b'nei Yisrael, and take another piece of wood and write LeYosef eitz Ephraim v'chol beis Yisrael. So, and that is symbolizing the split between the two parties amongst Klal Yisrael. And eventually, the Navi says, put them together, they'll become as one. So the Abarbanel says, why by Yehuda it says, write Yehuda ubnei Yisrael. And for Yosef it says, write Ephraim v'chol beis Yisrael. V'chol beis Yisrael. What's the difference? So the Barbanel says that Yehuda, when the split happened, Yehuda had just 2 Shvatim. The Aseres HaShvatim went with Yosef and Ephraim. And that's the split of Aseres HaShvatim. There were individuals who weren't happy with the Aseres HaShvatim and left the Aseres HaShvatim to be with Yehuda. Why? Because amongst the Malchei Yisrael started with Yerovam ben Nevat, and Yerovam ben Nevat did not allow Eila Regolim. So some individuals scattered and ran away from Beis Yisrael, and they went to Yehuda. That's why when the Eitz Echad is written, it says Yehuda v'levnei Yisrael, and to those individuals who came in. However, the vast majority of the Sfatim and the people who belong to them, it says Yosef Eitz Ephraim v'chol beis Yisrael chaveira, because over there was the majority. And the Navi says, take these 2 woods, put them together, and they'll become as one. They'll become as one. Beautiful. And that's how eventually Hashem promises us that everybody will be together. The Pasuk says, Va'avdi David melech aleim, and my servant David will be the one king. There won't be a split anymore. V'roya echad yiyeh lechulam, and there will be one shepherd for God's Klal Yisrael. So here too we find a beautiful pshat that everybody, all nations, all people would want to do tshuva for the past sins. However, there will be some people that will be so embarrassed of what they did over the past year that they'll be embarrassed to do tshuva because their sins were many. So therefore, the pasuk says, "Va'avdi David melech aleim." You have to learn from David HaMelech. The Gemara says that David was not really It wasn't shaykh for David to do that story with Bathsheba, and it looks so negative and such a big sin. And he only did it lahoiris tshuva l'rabim. He did it so when people have a problem with tshuva and they say, "Oh, it's doomed. I'm gone. I'm forever." And it's too many people have fallen. So you learn from David HaMelech never to give up. And this is when it will be when the Shvatim will stick together. Va'avdi David Melech Aleim. Everybody will find reason to do tshuva. And towards the end of the Haftarah, it says, "V'karati lehem bris shalom bris olam yia oisam." I will make a permanent covenant. When nesatim v'yibesi oisam, I will multiply them. V'nesati es mikdashi b'soichem le'olam, and I will place the mikdash within them. The next pasuk says, "V'haya mishkani aleim," and my resting place will be on top of them. V'yisi lahem le'lekim, and I will be their God. So here too, the Chassam Sofer has a diuk, and the first pasuk says, "I will place my mikdash," and the following pasuk says, "I will place my mishkan." The first pasuk says, "B'soichem," within them, and the mishkan is aleihem. So he says the difference basically is when the thing is when the kedusha is permanent, when the kedusha is what you are, is the starting point and the end point of what you are. It's like a circle, and the center point is what's holding it up, and that's the mishkan. That's the mikdash when it's besoichem. If it's only in the lower level, then it would be aleim, and it's when it's only a mishkan.
You got it? Okay. Moving on to the book of Tehillim. All right, Tehillim for today, chapter 121. Do it. All right, Tanya thought today, and let's talk Tanya for the 6th and Shabbos tomorrow, the 7th.
Tanya thoughts for the 6th of TEVES. What if we mess up? What if we act out simply from our human animal impulse and we ignore and suppress our divine and the material items' divine origin and source? Then we have to do tshuva. That tshuva stems from our sense of distance from Hashem and remorse at having buried the divine spark via our layers of impulse. When we accomplish this, we revisit that gluttonous act. And because its godliness is eligible for elevation, we can rescue it, we can redeem it, we can release it, and reunite it with its divine origin.
Let's talk Tanya for the 6th of TEVES. In yesterday's Tanya, we talked about Gimel Klippas HaTmeis, the lower level of Klippa, and how when a person engages with that level of Klippa, in other words, a person does a sin, so the only way to rectify it is by doing a high level of tshuva, called tshuva me'ava, a tshuva of love. And when a person does that tshuva, because it leads to such an intensified relationship with God, that retroactively redeems the sin. In today's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about two exceptions to that rule, two things that are forbidden, they are sins. But one of them is a little easier to redeem, and one of them is impossible to redeem. The first one, the one which is a little easier to redeem, which by the way doesn't make it less of a sin, doesn't make it less wrong, but it's easier to redeem, is the sin of what's called the zera levatala, the intentional emission of seed. For reasons that are beyond the scope of this lesson, it has to do with Kabbalistic reasons of the way that klipa is conceived. Even though, again, that is not allowed, however, a simple tshuva, doesn't have to be tshuva miyava, doesn't have to be this intense tshuva described yesterday, a simple tshuva, along with kavana, a person having intention when saying Kriya Shema Shalamita, the nightly reading of Shema, that redeems it, that act from klipa. That's on one side. On the other side is when a person has an illicit relationship and a mamzer, a illegitimate child, is born from that, so that even with a tshuva mi'ava, even the deepest and highest level of tshuva cannot completely redeem the sin. And the reason why is because right now the klipa has a physical manifestation here in this world, the child that was born. It's important to note, however, we're talking here about rectification. We're talking here about pulling out the energy from the klipa, which is a very different conversation than forgiveness or atonement. There is no sin for which a person will not be forgiven if the person does tshuva. Doesn't make a difference what that sin is, including a person who has given birth to an illegitimate child. However, sometimes you can be granted forgiveness. You're considered a tzaddik. You're going to go straight to Gan Eden, but at the same time, you weren't able to fully, clean up the milk that was spilled. Usually, when we're doing a sin, it's not only that we're trying to attain forgiveness, we're actually trying to fix the mess that we created, and that is possible 99.9% of the time. However, there's this one exception where over there you can be granted forgiveness, but to fully rectify the sin is simply physically impossible because the child is over there. So there's a larger idea that emerges from here, understanding what tshuva is. And tshuva is not only about attaining forgiveness, but actually through tshuva, we're able to go back in time and fix the damage that we have done. In tomorrow's Tanya, we're going to find out about the unique status of non-kosher foods within the world of Gimel Klipas Hatmeyas, this lower level of Klipa. For reasons we will find out, non-kosher foods has a special status, and we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Tanya thoughts for the 7th of Teves. What makes something prohibited, treif, asur, trapped, imprisoned? Tanya teaches that the prohibition is a sign that the godliness which does exist in every entity is so trapped in its body that it cannot be accessed via direct interaction, rather only by avoiding it. What happens if one's impulse allows them to indulge in this? Then the repair requires something far greater, to revisit and completely exhume that experience, and even then there will always be the residue, which may only be repairable in a spiritual manner.
And there you have Tanya, Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam. We're up to class number 26.
Our theme the past few days has been discussing damages that are imposed by a person's property. And here's another one of them. Positive mitzvah number 238 is that the courts must judge all the cases involving when a person's pit causes damage to another person or animal. Now, when the Torah uses the terminology pit, besides for referring to the pit in the literal sense, a hole which a person digs in the ground, it also refers to any stumbling block that a person places in the way of the other's normal walking path. So if a person were to put his bundle down in the middle of the road for no apparent reason and somebody or an animal were to trip over it and get hurt, he'd be responsible to pay for this on account of the mitzvah of pit, of being obligated in damages imposed by a pit, because that includes also a stumbling block placed in the road. In addition to the other ways we've discussed in the past few days that a person's property can cause damage, either by his animal physically damaging another person or animal, or by his animal eating from someone else's property, or a person's pit or stumbling block causing damage, positive mitzvah number 241 teaches that the courts are obligated to judge cases where a person's fire causes damage to another person's property. This can happen in one of two ways. Either a person lights a fire in his own backyard, but is negligent with the temperatures and not careful about where the fire could spread, and then the fire jumps to another person's property, or a person actually goes to his friend's property and lights it on fire. In both of those cases, a person is obligated to pay restitution for the damage that he's caused.
All right. Matters of Mashiach. Like the days when you left Egypt, I will show you miracles. The words of the prophets and the teachings of the sages are full of compromises and predictions. Delicacies will be commonplace as dust. The wolf will lie with the lamb, man will live forever, and the dead will return to life. These miracles are some of the most exciting aspects of Olam Haba, the time to come. By learning the secrets of Torah, we hasten this revelation. The study unites our intellect and our faith, which corresponds to nature and the supernatural. By uniting these two aspects in us, we will merit to see how they unite in the world to create the miracles foretold by our sages.
Begin with the goal in mind. God began creating his world with his final objective in mind, a future era of universal peace, harmony, and prosperity. Judaism believes that this vision lies not only at the core of creation, but at the core of every human soul. We refer to this ultimate state as the Geula, redemption, which will be ushered in by Mashiach, the Messiah. What can we do to hasten the Geula? The first thing is to simply become aware of God's desire. The more we are aware of it as the goal, the more it will positively influence our actions, which will then make the goal a reality.
Beautiful, huh? All right, now our PSAs. Via Soup Kitchen and Food Pantry available by checking the word Shabbos.org in Rockland County, Tomche.org in Lakewood, breakfastwitheli.live/Chicago Food Bank in Chicago in the Midwest, and breakfastwitheli.live/Soup Kitchens for a national list. Achiezer.org is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on Shabbos in an emergency for all your other emergency needs. And use Hatzalah ambulance service, Hatzalah EMS, available worldwide, Hatzalah.org. Miss Askim in times of bereavement. They're the people to call. They will help you out. And Just One Shabbos is bringing youth back to the beauty of keeping Shabbos. If you are the victim of or see a hate crime in progress, you need to call 911 immediately. And again, Yom Tov and Shabbos apply to that too. You can call. That's a mitzvah, a very, very big mitzvah. And while we are in the cold and flu season,
wear a mask.
We are still wearing masks. As a matter of fact, we are now recommending that people returning from Asia need to get tested for COVID. There possibly is another wave. I'm not trying to be an alarmist. Don't freak out. But you need to get your vaccines. You need to protect yourself. You need to be wearing a mask because we've become very callous about the whole thing. People are gathering en masse without masks. without any kind of social distancing, it's very, 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 very frightening what could happen. So let's just be careful, okay? All right, bring some heaven down to earth. Israeli soldier who lost both his legs when a landmine exploded beneath his Jeep. His mother came to him in the hospital and cried. Father sat silent. Generals and leaders came and made their speeches proclaiming him a hero and one to be proud of. There was no condolence. People still avoided him in the street. But Lubavitcher Rebbe shook his hand, looked him straight in the eye and said, "Thank you." He reports that thank you still carrying him today. You know that thank you for your service? No idea the impact. All right. Come discuss it with me on social media. Any of the Actors Rabbis groups at Clubhouse, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Spotify, Telegram. What else do we have? Yeah, Telegram, Twitter, WhatsApp, and at theactorsrabbi.com, where you can sign up for life coaching services. All right, let's make it after. Baruch ato Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam boirei nefashos rabois v'chesronan al kol ma sheborosa lachayos bohem nefesh kol chai baruch chai haolamim. All right. Erev Shabbos, 4:19 and 5:20. Shabbos at 5:3 tomorrow night, and it begins at 4:19 in New York City. So make sure that you get your candles lit in time. You don't have to worry about Hanukkah candles, though. That's for sure. That's a good thing. All right. What else do I need to tell you? It is the last Shabbos of the solar year. That's right. Saturday night and Sunday, we go into 2023. I know. Can you imagine? 2023. Where did that come from? I know. Here we go. 2023. Look at that. Don't forget to write 2023 on your checks. Does anybody still write checks? That's very funny. I made it funny. Ha ha. All right. Thank you to my Patreon sponsors, Pesper Riddle, Tarzane Orchids, Dina D Design, Dr. Susan Spitzer. Thank you for Bracha Biederman. Thank you for being sponsors. Go to patreon.com/theactorsrabbi or breakfastwithelli.live/tipjar to contribute today. Go out and do something good and something nice for someone today. In the words of Rabbi Isaac Kalmer, have affection for a fellow. Hashem will have affection for you. Do a kindness for a fellow. Hashem will do a kindness for you. Befriend a fellow by drawing him close, and Hashem will draw you close to him. Make it a great and glorious day, a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. I will see you Sunday. I will see you next year. You can only say that joke once, right? All right. Be good. Little David fight. Little David fights in the fight in the man. I'm sorry. Little David, the fight in the man. A Moshe Yes song redone by his son Tali Yes. And I thought we'd go out with that. I think that's a great tribute. So enjoy Tali Yes's. It's not the man in the fight, but the fight in the man. Take a good lesson from that. And I will see you Sunday in Mirz Hashem. Please bring people to watch with you.
Story about little David
from a slingshot made old Goliath die. And the people that came from miles around just to shake his hand. You know it's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man. Said, hey man, oh hallelujah, the prophets all say it's true. You can do anything on earth under heaven that you set your mind to do. Said, hey man, oh hallelujah, with heaven as your helping hand. You know it's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man. Jericho's mighty strong with its walls up to the sky. Joshua was up against 10 to 1 and did not bow tonight. No, he blew the ram sword 7 times and circled around the town. And the people of Jericho hit the road as the walls come tumbling down. They said, hey man, oh hallelujah, the prophets all say it's true. You can do anything on earth under heaven that you set your mind to do. They said, hey man, oh hallelujah, with heaven as your helping hand. You know it's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man. Said, hey man, oh hallelujah, the prophets all say it's true. You can do anything on earth under heaven that you set your mind to do. Said, hey man, oh hallelujah, with heaven as your helping hand. You know it's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man.
Right before Shabbos arrives, I'm getting a text, Shabbos is coming, with so much warmth, it changes my life.
This is a short new lesson that strengthens and renews our connection.
They truly enhance my Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.
Every Friday, Dad gives me a lot of chizuk. This is a great opportunity I should have taken earlier.
The parasha begins this week. Emor.
This is early. Don't be late. Text or WhatsApp your zip code to 732-785-4164 for your weekly candle lighting reminder. A free service of BP Print Group.
Ay, 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 good Shabbos. Ay, 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 Shabbos Kodesh.